everyone, welcome back to AskAmy. I hope you're doing well and had a good weekend. So today I have a question about sleep, and sleep is a question, the whole topic of sleep, questions about that are pretty common. I think people have a hard time sleeping sometimes, and it's definitely one of those things that feels like we're in our own way. You know, I mean, anything that's a sticking point or an obstacle in that way comes down to us being in our own way, innocently, in one way or another. But sleep is one of those that people have this sense that, like, you know, you feel it. You're like, oh, I'm doing this to myself. I'm making it harder than it needs to be. All that good stuff, which just makes everything feel a little harder all around. So Kate has a question about sleep, and I hope that a lot of you can relate to it. So she says, a few years ago, I had a little trouble falling asleep one evening. Prior to this, I never had any issues. The next day, I began worrying if I would fall asleep that evening, and this began to snowball into more worry, which led, as you can probably predict already, into nights where I didn't sleep for most of the night. Prior to learning about the principles, I took a low-dose sleeping pill, which did the job of shutting down the chatty part of my brain. I still take a low dose regularly, although I've had times where I haven't touched them for over 4 months, and there are a few nights a week at the moment where I fall asleep naturally. I'm aware it's a habit, i.e. the mentality of, so this is what she's saying is the habit, this thinking, if I don't take a sleeping aid, I won't fall asleep. So that's a habitual thought, Kate's saying that she knows she has. If I don't take this sleeping aid, I won't fall asleep. I know my sleeping system isn't broken. It's always intact, and but for my thinking, my body will do it naturally. So let me just stop here for a second. So Kate's essentially saying she knows she's fine. She knows her body knows how to sleep. She knows that her sleeping system is intact, which is great to know. That, but for her thinking, her body will just do what it needs to do, right? Now, I would say that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to fall asleep at 10 o'clock every night and let you sleep straight through until 7 or whatever your dream scenario is. But I do love that you see, Kate, you know, that underlying this, your body's okay. There's not like a major problem in that area. It's this thinking. And in particular, you have this thinking, if I don't take my sleeping aid, I won't sleep. So Kate goes on to say, recently, I just feel a little lost in the thought storm about it, and I'd like to see more clearly again as I have in the past. Ironically, when my anxiety jumps from my sleep to another area of my life, such as the fickle nature of thought, I sleep great. To summarize, my question is, how do I kick the habit of thinking I need a sleep aid to sleep? So it's a great question, Kate, and again, just a great topic overall that I know a lot of people struggle with. It's so fascinating to me to hear this because, again, kind of what I pulled out a minute ago, you see, and I know you know this, that things are fine, that you'll sleep, your body will sleep when it needs to sleep in the big picture of things. And this is true for most of us. Now, all kinds of medical things, weird things happen, but by and large, for the huge majority of us, our body's going to figure this out. It's going to do what it needs to do. And that's not always going to coincide with how we think it should be going. So this is a really important thing to see. I mean, your body might naturally fall asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning and wake up at 6. And while your mind is going to want to really argue with that, saying, I need more sleep, this isn't right, it's interesting to set aside all the thinking and the opinions about it and to just see what our body's naturally doing. Now, again, I'm not saying that if you only get 4 hours of sleep every night, that's your normal and that's natural and all of that good stuff. Not at all. It's just a difference between seeing what's happening with the machinery. Your machinery does fall asleep at some point, and it will, most likely. You know, eventually it will fall asleep. And seeing that as separate from how your mind has all kinds of opinions and how your mind is kind of narrating or arguing and wanting to control the whole thing. So that alone is really interesting. But what you're seeing, Kate, is that it's all okay, but you have this thought, if I don't take my sleeping aid, I won't fall asleep. And that thought feels like it's the culprit. Now, just kind of by definition, if we just look at that, we're saying, it's okay, I know I'm fine, and I have this thought that I need my sleeping aid, and I really want this thought to go away. Now, if we take this into another scenario, it's kind of the equivalent of saying, it's cloudy, And I know that clouds change by themselves. I know they do. But can you please help me make these clouds go away so that I can have a better day? Now, I think it's so interesting to take these kind of things that we all get caught up in real life. Like in the everyday of it, no one would be able to see through that. Or I should say, we all have times when we can't see through this, right? But when we take it into something like weather or some other thing that we clearly know we have no say in, and we clearly know that it rights and corrects itself, we can start to see where we have invisible thought. So no one's saying, I'm guessing, Kate, you wouldn't say, it's cloudy, and I know that. I know the clouds are going to pass, but how do I kick the habit of thinking that the clouds aren't going to pass? Now, if we look at it there again, what's this habit? I don't know. It's a thought that shows up, but it's a thought that as much as you know it's not real, it still kind of looks and feels real, and that's okay. You are not alone in this. Trust me, you're along with almost 8 billion of us. We're all in this, where stuff we know better, but there's still a little bit of a hold it seems to have, or like a little juice to it, where we still get a little caught up in it. And I just want you to see, Kate, that that's all that's happening here. That's all that's happening. So it isn't a special habitual thought that you need to get rid of. It isn't any of that. You know you're okay. And there's this little thing that shows up that says, better take that sleeping aid. What's going to happen if you don't take that sleeping aid? And the more you can see that is something that is kind of separate, like isn't so worthy of, let's figure this out and let's get rid of it. Like it doesn't it's kind of irrelevant whether it's there or not. If you can kind of start to see it in that way, it's going to be irrelevant whether it's there or not, if that makes any sense. So right now, the presence of it, and for all of us, again, in many areas of our lives, the presence of it, the fact that our mind kind of goes there, it feels sort of important. It feels like, oh, this is hurting me. This is making me rely on this medication. It's making me not sleep as well. It's creating anxiety. It's, it can look like a thing. But as soon as that thought just looks like, oh, that's just something that's there, and you begin to be kind of more spacious around it, and maybe even kind of see it in a little more neutrally, like you're more neutral about it. It just doesn't matter that it's there or not. That's going to make a difference. I remember once, years ago, like maybe 5 years ago, I just moved into this house that we're in now, and I was just meeting some of my neighbors, and I was having some sessions with Mark Howard at that time, and well, I won't go into the details, but I had met a neighbor, kind of chatted, kind of forgot her name, wasn't sure if I had her name right, I don't know, all this stuff. So at the pool a couple weeks later, thought it was her. I still don't even know to this day if it was her or not, but I was like, that thing in my head, like, should I say something? Like, I'm so rude. I think this is a woman I just spent a half hour talking with, but I can't remember her name, and I don't know if it's her, and I don't want to look stupid if it's not, like, oh, whatever. All this stuff. So I didn't say anything. So it just weighed on me. It's such a dumb thing, but it was big for me. It weighed on me for days. And it brought up all this stuff of like, I don't know why, but at that time it really looked like, wow, this is a thing I do, and this is a problem. I need to get to the bottom of this. And it's, it looked like it had all these implications for affecting relationships and all this stuff. So I showed up for my next session with Mark after that happened and told him about it. And he was kind of like, yeah, I do stuff like that too. And I thought, no, you don't understand. That's fine. Like, okay, thanks for making me feel better. But I know I'm not alone in this, but I want to change it. Like, this needs to change. This is a pattern, is how it looked to me. This is this pattern in like these relationships, and it's a thing I do, and I need to see through it and all of this. And I, I'm not quoting him or anything. I'm just kind of going on memory from 5 years ago. But it was just kind of this thing for him of like, okay, if this is a thing you do and you have all this thinking about it, like, what are you going to do to fix it? Like, what do you want me to do? What are we going to do? We're going to analyze it? Are we going to take it back to your past? Are we going to dissect it to death? Are we going to find some strategy to fix it? Like, this is my memory of what he said, is essentially like, okay, it's made a thought. We know that. if you'd like to see something around that, so if you would like to see that differently, then why don't you just kind of set it aside and don't worry about it? And know that the less you're staring at it, like this is a problem and it needs my fix, the more it's just over here saying, yeah, I would love to see something about that. I don't know why I didn't say anything and then it bothered me for days. I don't know what's up with that, but I'd love to see that differently so that I don't relive that experience over and over again. And then leave it alone. And again, if you're watching, Mark, I have no idea what you really said. This is just kind of my memory today of the gist of it. But it was basically like, set it on the shelf, like see it for what it is. It's all thought. It's okay that it doesn't look like thought to you right now. It is all thought because everything is. It's thought that looks real to you. And just put it over there and mind will work on it. You know, bigger mind, like bigger energy, bigger clarity is just going to go work on that for you. And you will see things about it if there's something to see about it. And I don't know why, but that kind of came up for me as I was reading your question, Kate, because it's like, you know, but then you kind of like don't know, like the thought is there and you know it's just thought, but it still feels real. And it's kind of that big jumble of stuff. And just to kind of make it really simple and remind you, it is just a thought. I need my sleeping aid to sleep. No, you don't. You probably don't, you know, and if you do, you do. But either way, what's bothering you isn't that. What's bothering you is that this thought looks so real and it looks like a problem and I need to see through this habit. And so I'm just going to tell you what Mark told me. Set it on the shelf, leave it alone. The more you're picking at it, and I respect the fact that you say you want to see more clearly again, and that's awesome. So I'm not at all saying, like, that's the thing, is we can bring these questions up and say, wow, there's something here that I just don't like, just like I did, just like you did, just like everyone who writes a question does, right? There's something here I'd love to see something around. And the ironic thing is, just by putting it out there and saying that, like that's about 90%, maybe more, of what we need to do. So you're seeing it as thought that doesn't look like thought. Now just set it on the shelf and just go on with your life. Take the sleeping aids, don't take the sleeping aids, try it, don't try it. Know that your body's just gonna do whatever it does, whatever it needs to do to kind of regulate this. And know that when your mind goes to, I need this, there's no power to that. There's no inherent power to that. It's just a little thought cloud that shows up a lot. And the more you can just see it and be like, oh, hey, you, okay, and just almost have this feeling of neutrality around it, the less it's going to do anything to really affect you. And pretty soon, I bet you anything, it becomes one of those things that you can notice your mind going there, but it's just like, you know, take it or leave it. It can be there or not be there. It doesn't need to go away, and it doesn't have to affect you that much. So I hope this is helpful, as I always say to all of you, whether this is your issue or not. And thanks so much for sending your questions and for listening here. I do have a new PDF, free PDF. What's it called? 3 Simple Ways to Break Free from Habits, Anxiety, and Addiction, even when you've tried everything else. So if you want to grab that, it's at my website, dramyjohnson.com. And I also have a podcast starting very soon. Been working on it for a while now, and it's gonna be out in just a week or two. So get on my list there at the website, and you'll hear all the updates about when the podcast is out. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next Monday.